Hi, this is a Key Stage 4 keywords for the forces unit. The rate of change of velocity. So as velocity is then getting faster, it can be calculated from the gradient of the velocity time graph. Okay, so velocity time graph, velocity, oh, that's supposed to be a V, time graph, but it's the rate of change is acceleration. The distance a vehicle travels when braking. Okay, this can be affected by road conditions, weather conditions, as well as the condition of the vehicle. So it's literally the brakes goes on, it's the braking distance. When a force acts on a moving object or on an object that has the ability to move, okay, that's then the change in momentum, okay, the desire of the object to go forwards. The total momentum of a system before an event is always equal to the total momentum afterwards. So if you've got two objects moving along, right, and they have a crash, then what happens is the momentum is conserved. Conservation of momentum. A force that occurs when objects are physically touching is a contact force. How far, a measure of how far an object moves in a given direction. So I sometimes say it's like the crow flies, where the crow can fly in any direction, right, in a straight line. It's a straight line between the starting and finish points in a vector quantity, displacement. A measure how far an object moves that does not depend on direction. It's a scalar quantity, distance. The force beyond which an object will no longer deform elastically and will instead deform plastically. All right, so that's when you pull a spring and it doesn't go back to its original place, elastic limit. The energy stored in a spring, so energy, store, spring, when it is stretched or compressed due to the work done on the spring by the deforming force, elastic potential energy. If the resultant force, so the force going in that way, and the resultant moment are both equal to zero, it is at equilibrium. A push or pull that an object experiences due to interaction with another object is a force. The tendency of an object to remain in the same state of uniform motion, okay, so it's kind of its tendency to keep going at exactly the same motion or stay at rest is its inertia. A measure of how hard it is to change an object's velocity, it's its inertial mass. The point beyond which the extension of an elastic object is no longer directly proportional to the force, okay, so that is then the actual point where a spring doesn't go back to its original place. The product of an object's mass and velocity, momentum, so that's its desire to go forward. The bigger the mass, the bigger the velocity, the more desire it has to go forward. A calibrated spring balance used to measure weight, okay, so weight as a force is a Newton meter. If a stationary object resultant force is zero, the object will remain stationary. If the moving object's resultant force is zero, the object will continue to move at the same speed in the same direction. Okay, Newton's first law. An object's acceleration is directly proportional to the force applied to it, and inverse proportional to its mass, Newton's second law. The forces that two objects exert on each other when they interact are equal and opposite, Newton's third law. A force that occurs when objects are physically separated, non-contact, like magnetic. The permanent deformation, which means the object will no longer return to its original shape, plastic deformation, that's your spring that is then stretched and doesn't go back. All forces can be resolved into two perpendicular components that have the same effect on the single force. Resolution of forces. A single force that can replace all of the individual forces. So if you've got a box like that and you've got lots of forces going on it, right, the resultant force is just one individual arrow. Quantities that only have a magnitude, so that is basically a number, not a direction, is scalar. A scalar quantity that is a measure of the rate of increase of distance. So this is then just a number, speed, and it's how fast an object is then going. A measure of the spring stiffness, so the bigger the number of spring constant, the stiffer the spring. The sum of the thinking and the braking distance, so thinking and braking is the stopping distance. The distance a vehicle travels during the driver's reaction time, so you see somebody step out onto the road, you have to think about it. Obviously you don't think about it too much, all right, and then what you do, you put your brakes on. And the thinking distance and the braking distance, like we just talked about in the first one, is the stopping distance. Thinking distance can be affected by tiredness, drugs, or alcohol. The upward force acting on an object in a fluid due to its experience a greater pressure below it than above it, upthrust. Quantities that have a magnitude, which is a number, and a direction, represented by an arrow with the length representing the magnitude. Okay, so it could be that, and the arrowhead representing the direction, vector quantity. A vector quantity, so it's got a magnitude and a direction, that is a measure of the rate of change of displacement. It is a speed in a given direction, velocity. The force acting on an object due to gravity is then weight. Okay, there's a lot of information in that unit. Okay, there's a lot of keywords. Okay, so what you need to do is you need to pick out all the different individual bits of facts on it, play it again if you need to make sure that you're getting the correct keyword. All right, now on a piece of paper, pause the video as it goes through now and write down your answers. Okay, personally, I think that's a bit of a tricky one, right? So if you got them all right, then you're brilliant. Okay, any ones that you got wrong, go back and have a look at the words themselves and then write it down and do it again. Okay, good, well done. Right, again, if you still haven't got them all right, go and do it again. Okay, it's worth it. Right, and then set yourself a timer, well, not a timer, set yourself on your calendar. I want to go back and do the forces unit again. Right, and then do it again in not too distant future.